Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you the family tree of King George V. And please like the video if you enjoy it. And let's start. First let's start with his ancestors. So that means his parents and grandparents. His parents were Alexandra of Denmark and Edward VII. He wasn't king yet because Queen Victoria was the queen when George was born, and she was even queen when some of his children were born. But I named his father Edward VII because later he would be king, and then after he died, he would be king because his older brother would be dead. Um, so anyway, um, anyway, um, um, he was actually called Prince Albert Edward of Great Britain, or no, Albert Edward, Prince of Wales. But then he later became king. So now let's go to his grandparents. George's maternal grandparents were Christian the Ninth of Denmark and Louise of Hesse-Kassel. I think that's how you spell it. You pronounce it. His paternal grandparents were Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, but Prince Albert was already dead when George was born. George had an older brother, Albert Victor, three younger sisters, Louise, Victoria, and Maud, and a younger brother, Alexander, who died at birth. And the reason why Albert didn't become king is because he died young. He died when he was 28 or 29, when Queen Victoria was still queen. So when she died, Albert Edward became king, and then George became king. And so he married Mary of Teck, and they had 6 children together: Edward, Albert, Mary, Henry, George, and John. Edward became king after George died, and but then he abdicated because he wanted to marry Wallis Simpson, and that made him abdicate because they wouldn't let him marry a divorced American woman. Uh, uh, but what I mean is they wouldn't allow him to marry a divorced woman, and he was married, but after he abdicated. So after he abdicated, his younger brother Albert became king, as known as George VI. I did his family tree earlier, and so he married Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, and they had 2 daughters, Elizabeth and Margaret. Margaret actually died 20 years before Elizabeth, and Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon actually lived to be 101, almost 102. She outlived her daughter Margaret by 1 month. And so Mary married a man named Henry Lascelles, I think that's how you pronounce it. They had 2 sons, while King George was still alive, of course. There was George and Gerald. Henry married a woman named Lady Alice Montagu Douglas Scott. I added that Montagu because I think that's one of her last names, I think, or maybe her middle names. I'm not sure. But they did not have any kids while King George was still alive. And earlier I mentioned that Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon lived to be 101. You might be thinking she's the longest living not British monarch, but royal family member. She's not. Actually, Lady Alice Scott lived to be 102, and she died around the same time as Elizabeth. Uh, so George married Princess Marina of Greece and Denmark. They had a son, Edward. They probably had more children, but that was the only one that was born when King George was alive. And finally, there was John. John was the youngest sibling, youngest brother, but he was the only one to never be married and the only one to never live to adulthood because he died when he was 13 years old. He probably had a seizure or something. I think that's what it was. He died from seizure. There is a movie called King's Speech, and so basically it was a movie about King George. Actually, at first Prince Albert, and he couldn't speak right. He was like talking like, for example, let me think of a line. Like, for example, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died on the same day. So he would be saying like this: Thomas Jefferson died on the same day as John Adams. Like, yeah, like you understand how I was saying? He used to say that, but then he married. Holy fuck! I said married. I meant met a doctor named Lionel Liu, I think, and he was his uh he was his doctor of speaking right and stuff, and then they became friends, and so he was telling the doctor that his youngest brother John died of a seizure or something when he was 13. I only know about that from the movie. So, and that's the whole family tree of George V. And on this channel that you're watching this video, go to my channel, and I'm gonna do a post with a voting poll on it, and it's gonna ask you which family tree do you want to see next. So I'm gonna put Charles the First, Charles the Third, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, aka Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, and Queen Elizabeth the Second. So you decide whose family tree you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next. Bye bye.